Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brian Martin with your daily Manchester United news show. Apologies for missing yesterday. I was wrapped up covering the women's game, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But January crisis is the thumbnail, that is the title, and honestly, that leads me to my question. What happens if both Xerxes and Mainu leave in January? I really want to hear your thoughts on this. I know I briefly mentioned it in a previous show, but honestly, with the way the talks are going and ramping up, I think it needs or it warrants further discussion. So I really want you guys to get involved and let me know what you think. Because right off the bat, I would say that that would be a crisis. If both Xerxes and Manu leave in January, that leaves us short on options. And I know you say, okay, we've got a million tens, but if we get an injury or two, suddenly we're looking a lot thinner, right? And then obviously with Mainu, who keeps being shunted into the midfield, if I mean Bruno doesn't get hurt, but let's say Casemiro or Ugarte, is hurt. So, I think that we would be in a spot of trouble if those two left, and then, as always, what seems to happen to us every year, we go into some sort of injury crisis and we're suddenly having to wedge players in or overplay certain players who then get injured when the other players return, and we never quite have like a steady full squad, if you know what I mean. So that's my question to you. Again, what happens and would we be in crisis if both Xerxes and Manu left? Obviously, Xerxes trying to get into the Dutch national team for the World Cup. Manu trying to do the same for England. Neither are with their national sides right now. So I think they're, sitting home probably thinking, how do I make this happen in the next, what, 8 months, we'll say, or so? I'm not sure how many more camps there are. I want to say there's maybe two or three more camps, international camps, before the World Cup. So Xerxes and Manu are sitting home right now wondering, how do I get into the squad? And right now it's looking like a January exit. And so what happens to us, Manchester United, if that happens? Um, Let me know. That's really the big question of today. We've got like 12 games or so between now and the January transfer window opens. So unless Amram really finds a way to start rotating in Xerxes and Manu, and they take their chances, of course. Let's make sure we're clear on that. It's not just playing them for playing them sake. It's playing them because we know they have quality and talent, and then Manu and Xerxes themselves doing their part of the business, which is showing that quality and talent. So let me just be clear on that. It's not playing them just to play them. It's playing them because they have the ability, but then they need to obviously show that ability. So, I mean, if you think about it, right? Xerxes before was being used as a striker and kind of like a backup to Hoyland before, and now I feel like that's kind of the same deal with Sheshko. Although before, you know, uh, Amram was seeming to prefer Mount to Sheshko, and then Sheshko's now preferred, so that puts what Xerxes what third option striker. But again, all it takes is for, you know, a Mount injury, or Sheshko injury, and suddenly we are very thin at the striker position. Honestly, we're very thin now, if you think about it. I mean, we had Cheeto Obi Martin coming through. He seems to have disappeared a little bit, in terms of first team involvement. Who else do we have really who could play striker? Again, even though Mount was up there, he isn't a striker, right? He can press, can do all that great stuff, but he's not a striker. So if Sheshko gets hurt, we're putting Mount back up there, right? And if Xerxes gone, what do we do? Right? Are we calling Cheeto now up suddenly? It's like, hey, we know you've been missing for a while from the first team, but now you need to lead the line. We're gonna have, Rasmus Højlund part two, where you throw a young kid up there and they have to lead the line for Manchester United. So I think that'd be a big problem if Xerxes goes. Um, and then again, you go to Manu, right? Manu's been shunted into the midfield, although I think he's also a 10. I think both Xerxes and Manu are 10s, but let's talk about where they've been playing. So again, Manu shunted to the midfield. You know, Bruno's there. Obviously, Bruno's going to play unless he, heaven forbid, knock on wood, gets hurt. But then again, you only got really what Ugarte and Casemiro there, and Casemiro's older, right? More likely to get injured, or probably suspended, given Casemiro how he plays. Then you got Ugarte, who I don't think he's had the worst injury record. I think he's been fairly stable and consistent, but that's who you're going to rely on, Ugarte and Bruno. So yeah, I think it would be a bit of a problem if Xerxes and Manu leave. But again, that's my question to you. So let me know your thoughts in the comments in the chat there. Um, and just more on that. So the teams that are looking at both Xerxes and Manu. So we'll start with Xerxes. Everton, Roma are looking at Xerxes. I think there might be one other Italian club looking at Xerxes. As you know, he was at Bologna for a little bit, did well there. But it seems like wages might be a problem for both Everton and Roma. And then Manu, Napoli seems to be the front runner. I think at one point there was talk of Newcastle. Um, I want to say Aston Villa was kind of whispered for like half a day, but it seems like Napoli is the front runner there. But again, my big question to you is, would it be a bit of a crisis if both Xerxes and Manu leave and we get an injury to Sheshko, or an injury, a couple injuries across that front three or even in the midfield, right? That's my question. Let me know in the chat. Um, I mean, in terms of, transfers and things like that, so we're kind of moving into that, talking about Xerxes and Manu leaving in January. Of course, there's all the Adam Wharton talk. Obviously at Palace, apparently that there's a gentleman's agreement in place for Wharton to leave Palace for around £65 million. The Angelo Stiller talks really quieted down. I haven't heard much about that recently, but last I heard, he had a 35 million like pound release clause. I think it was something like that. Again, all these figures, right? Is Google, and it's a little bit of guesstimation, right? No one actually knows what these figures are or would be, except for people behind the doors, and they're not going to say it publicly. So again, a little bit of Googling, a little bit of guesstimation. Elliot Anderson, Nottingham Forest, 22. I saw him in the England versus Wales match. I thought he had a very good match there. I think he would be great. Honestly, maybe I haven't seen enough of Wharton. And, I guess I'm kind of putting Wharton and Anderson together because they're young. I mean, there's Baleba too, right? But out of that young trio, and Baleba, Anderson, and Wharton, I almost lean towards Anderson at this point. I feel like Elliot Anderson could be got for a cheaper price than Wharton or Baleba. And he seems to have all the attributes from what I've seen that we would need, right? So I'd honestly go for Wharton. I mean, Anderson out of those three. Um, Call me crazy, but I think Wharton and Baleba, they're priced so high, and then Baleba has not had a great start to the season. Although I think part of that is him throwing a bit of a tantrum about not getting his move to United. But again, maybe I need to go back and watch a bit more. But at this point, I'd lean towards focusing on getting Elliot Anderson, whether it's in January, or in summer. Um, but who I do think we will get in January, I still think that the Conor Gallagher to Manchester United, you know, idea transfer is still very much on. That's what I think. Again, I have not read that anywhere lately, um, but that's just my thought. He just seems like the right type of player that again could be had for a reasonable price, to come in, do a job for us, hopefully be a mainstay. That would be great. And maybe play his way back into the England squad. So Gallagher's who I think comes in January. I think you might see that talk ramp up here probably another mid November time. You might start seeing more rumors of the Gallagher move, and then obviously it ramps up and ramps up and ramps up, and then you start hearing leaks, and then boom, he's holding the shirt. That's what I think. I could be totally wrong. This is my guess. Um, Baleba already mentioned, again, poor start to the season, throwing a bit of a tantrum. But apparently Brighton is still holding to that 100 million plus price tag for him. So I don't know. You know, it's like, do you go for that? Do you go for someone who's throwing a bit of a tantrum because it didn't get their move? Does it show a lack of professionalism? But then, I mean, you look at Anthony, right? And although Anthony was a flop, he wanted to be at Manchester United, and he gave his all every match. He just didn't work out. You could get that with Baleba. He comes, he's happy here, and you see the best of Baleba, or it could be a flop. And I would be so disappointed if we chase Baleba hard and he comes here and is a flop. I would be so disappointed. Um, and at that point, probably would have lost all faith in our recruiting department. But we'll see how the season cranks on. Again, it's probably another 12 games between now and January. So, and that's 12 games across the board, not just for Manchester United. Um, so we'll see how Baleba does. We'll see how the rest of the names mentioned, how they do, and how things shape up. You know, there was a Bellingham talk, I would say end of last week, but I feel like that's kind of quieted down a little bit. Again, he's unsettled over his lack of playing time at Dortmund, so could be an option there. So we'll see. We'll see. But continuing on with the transfer theme, so on Manchester Evening News, apparently there was some random survey that was given to some random agents. It was like 20 or so, and they ranked Šeško as the worst summer signing, like across the board, not just for Manchester United. And I thought, really? Like the worst summer signing across the board? I don't think he's been that bad. I mean, you tell me what you think. I don't think he's been bad. I mean, honestly, if you watch my post-match discussions, I feel like I've been saying that after each game, I've seen him grow into his role and get better and better. I mean, he's still not banging in the goals like we want, but not everyone hits the ground, running. But at least he's showing positive signs. So I wouldn't say he's the worst signing for the summer. I think that's wild to even put that out there. I mean, I wouldn't even call him the worst signing for United, to be honest. I mean, look, if you really want me to stir the pot a bit here, in terms of our, I don't want to say worst signing, but maybe most disappointing signing thus far, I'd probably say Cunha, if I'm being honest. And I know you're probably going to slate me for that, but like, he is Premier League proven. And to me, he's not quite shown it yet, right? Šeško is coming from a different league, so you'd always give him that extra bit of time because of that, right? To get up to speed with the Premier League, it's just a different animal. But I feel like he's come along faster, honestly. I know Cunha had like that one kind of good run. Was it against Arsenal? I think. And I'm not saying he's been awful either. I'm not saying he's been awful at all. But like, if I were to, put a tag on someone, which I hate to even do, but if I were to do it and stir the pot, I'd probably say he's been the most underwhelming. We'll say underwhelming. Let's put it that way. I don't want to say disappointing. I don't want to say worse because those are a little too damning. I would say underwhelming, right? But again, hopefully turns it around. He's been talking to the media a lot lately. He was asked about life at Manchester United, and he said it's only been 2 months, but it feels like it's been a much longer time. Just given all the things going on with the club and where they are right now. And then with Brazil, he was saying that he's happy to be working with Ancelotti. The usual stuff. I think he was quoted as saying, well, he knows that he's a big signing, so he needs to produce results. So good for him for recognizing that and realizing that, but need to see it on the pitch. But again, I'm not going to go in on him or any of the new signings because, again, it really has been a couple of months, right? So let's give him time. Let's let him get sorted. These international breaks really annoy me because I feel like you start to get a rhythm, especially as a new signing, and then you're ripped away and you go to your national team, or you're going to sit on your couch or doing individual training or whatever, right? So I really wish that these international breaks didn't happen um, at at the stage that they happen in the season. I mean, you think about it, right? It's like we play what, 3 Premier League games and then an international break, and then we come back and we play another. Was it 3 or 4, and then another break? And it's like as soon as you start to get rhythm, it's like boom, break, boom, fly to God knows where, to your country that you represent, um, and go integrate with the whole different team and the whole different system. Do that for 2 weeks and then come back, and you got to hit the ground running. I mean, we got Liverpool coming up, right? Um, so yeah, I man, if there's one thing I could change about the FIFA calendar, it would be these international breaks. I would rather I'd rather it be like a month long international break, right? So putting the two together, because each one's about 2 weeks. I'd rather there be like a 4 week international break or like a month long or so where the players, they just go, they're with their national teams, there's time to bed in, they get all their games out of the way, and then they come back and they're with their, you know, domestic club teams, and they can play and play and play. But like, again, playing 3 games, stopping for a couple weeks, playing another 3 or so, stopping for another couple weeks, like, you know, it breaks up the rhythm, right? And I feel like you don't get to see the full potential of teams. So again, like I said, I'd rather them combine those 2 international breaks into 1 month long break. And so, we get what, maybe 6 or so club games, and then month long break, um, international break, and then we come back and we, complete the first half of the season, and then there's a winter break depending what you know league you're in, and so forth and so on. I'd rather see that. But I don't know. Who am I? I'm just a talking head here on YouTube. Um, but anyway, jumping on to the women's front. So a victory over Everton yesterday, battled back from a 1-0 halftime deficit to defeat Everton 4-1 and remain unbeaten along with Chelsea. So the women United team and Chelsea are the only 2 unbeaten teams in the WSL. The goals came from Mallard. There's an own goal from Everton, and then 2 goals from who other than Jess Park. For some reason, the name Park and our midfield just go hand in hand. Just think about that, right? Just for some reason, our midfield and Park, that name just goes hand in hand. But anyway, Skinner said that they're big time players now. And then he was asked about his, strategy going into this match against Everton. And Skinner said, so then we rotated by playing a winger system rather than an inside 10 system. Second half, when Park comes on, they have to adapt again. It keeps people guessing that we're not just a one-trick pony. We have different ways to hurt you. I think that's very intelligent from a manager. That is how you should manage a football team. And that honestly is my biggest gripe with Ruben Amorim. Amorim comes out and says, we're not going to change. I don't care if we're getting our butts kicked week in, week out. We're not going to change. Blah, 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 blah. Skinner is like, look, we've got different players. We're going to adapt. We're going to keep you guessing. We're going to hurt you in different ways. And look at us, undefeated in the WSL, probably vying for the title championship. I mean, what else do I say? So anyway, looking ahead, the women take on Atletico Madrid midweek. Actually, it's Thursday. Is that midweek? Not quite midweek. It's like Friday Junior, right? Thursday. So I'll be doing not only a match watch for that game, I'm going to do a match preview for Manchester United versus Atletico Madrid in the Women's Champions League. So please do turn on your notifications and subscribe so you don't miss that one. Then after that, the ladies are on international break. Please, 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 no injuries while you are away. For the men, take on Liverpool on the 19th. Again, I'll do a match preview for that as well as a match watch and a post-match discussion. So we've got some exciting games coming up on the Manchester United front across both teams. And yeah, also on the Liverpool news, apparently they will be without Konate. So, again, you don't wish anyone to be injured, but I will take all the help that we can get facing Liverpool. And speaking of help, Mazraoui should be back. So that'll be a big boost, a big help, having him back in the squad. So a few quick reminders. Like I said, turn on notifications. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Please get involved in the chat and the comments. Follow me on Twitter over here. Check out my other channel, Football with Brian Martin. I will be covering an international match today, but I'm not sure which one. Probably Germany. I think Northern Ireland, who they're playing. It really depends on who I can stream here, right, in the United States. I'm already paying for enough streaming services. I'm not adding any more. So uh, depending on what I can stream here for what I'm already paying for in terms of streaming services, I will stream an international match. I'll do a match watch on my other channel, Football with Brian Martin. So again, subscribe there. The link is in the description below. And I think that's all I got for you. So I'll see you on the next one. Peace.